How do you find the strength to rebuild? And so many other questions. And today I want to introduce Sandra Maddox, who is, besides being just a very special person in my life, someone I would consider a spiritual mentor. She's an amazing person. Sandra is a speaker, mentor, teacher, ministry leader, an amazing interior designer. And she has a blog called The Art of Domesticity, and you can find that at theartofdomesticity.com. She's a children's book author. She has a book called Tiffany and the Talking Frog. And her heart's passion is to encourage, train, and inspire women to use their homes as places of ministry where each can uniquely express the love and reality of Christ in her marriage, in her motherhood, and as a woman of God. But Sandra also is no stranger to grief. Sandra knows what it's like to have her life stolen from her. She knows what it's like to wake up one morning thinking everything is right in the world, only to have her world turned completely upside down moments later. She knows what it's like to hurt, to grieve, and to feel that God can't possibly be loving and still let the unthinkable happen to her. But it did in 2003 when her 24-year-old daughter, Tiffany, was tragically killed in an auto accident. I think that is one of the biggest fears that every one of us as a parent probably has. And it's always hard for me to talk about that with you, Sandra, because that's the thing that initially drew me to you, because that's always been my big fear. And you handle it with so much grace. So welcome. I'm so honored to have you.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be here, Tana.
Yeah, I know a lot of people watching. We're going to get a lot of questions. That's just something that most of us feel is unnatural. Tell us about your daughter, Tiffany. Before we talk about how to handle grief, tell us about Tiffany.
So Tiffany was like any other, 24-year-old or any other child, vibrant, lovely. She loved to dance. She loved to read. She loved to, she loved the Lord. She was a really great dancer at a very young age. She competed. She made it to, it's funny, she went to Lutheran High, and she made it to the dance team, performance dance team. She was like the youngest. She was a freshman, and they didn't usually have freshmen on the performance team. So it tells you about her dance. Proud mama. So she made it to dance squad in the performance team and got to do a lot of really fun things. But she was an ASB student. She was, the brightest student, but she was definitely had great discipline in her academics and all that kind of stuff. She just was, truly a gift.
Was she social?
Best friends, kind of like you and Chloe.
Oh, yes.
Really best friends. I remember her going to first, kindergarten and dropping her off, and she just was sobbing, and she's like, "Mommy, who's going to go have lunch with you? Who's going to go shopping with you?" And she sobbed, and then I was trying to be that brave mom, and just let her go, and then sobbed in the car, couldn't even drive home. But anyways, that's a little bit about who she was and our relationship in it. And it had its ups and downs when she got to be more like in college, trying to search for her own, identity away from mom. And I did raise her more as a single mom. Her dad was involved in her life, but we divorced when Tiffany was about 12. That was our, right around there. So I raised her as a single mom for many, many years till I remarried, and she was already out of high school and when I remarried. So
yeah. Oh, it sounds like you had such a special relationship with her. And I remember, I know you because I know you from church and just many other, just knowing you personally.
Yeah.
I know you still have birthday parties for Tiffany, and you still remember those special times, and that's just so touching that you've never let that go.
No, it's part of the healing for anybody who's lost a child. People usually are afraid to call their name, or even ask how they are. So Tana, thank you for doing that, because it's kind of forgotten, and they're afraid. They think that, oh my goodness, if I say Tiffany's name, she's going to start crying. Yeah. She's going to be hurt. And that's like such a misnomer, really. Seriously, it's not. It feels warm and loving that someone cared enough to ask about her, even though they didn't know her, but just wanted to know a little bit about her. So it's heartfelt when someone calls out your child's name when they're not around.
I like that. And one thing I would love to just ask you, because I think you just touched on something really important. People feel unsure when
Hmm.
they're around someone who's grieving. They're not sure what to say. They're not sure how to behave. And that happens. I've known you for a long time. This happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
But there are times where even I'm like, I need to be careful about saying something that I'm doing with Chloe, or I need to, what would you say to people who, or sometimes I say something that I feel like I was stupid to say.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I just mentioned something about, my kids, my grandkids. Oh, I wasn't thinking and I shouldn't have said that. But what do you say to that?
I say, first of all, yes, sometimes people say really, like, I remember my first few weeks and months of grieving, people would say, "Oh, I understand how you're feeling. I lost my dog or my cat." And you're, ah! No, it's serious. That happens. Or, it's just that's probably better not said, or things like that. It's probably, unless you've lost a child, you really don't know.
Yeah.
You may have lost your grandparents, and yes, that's heartbreaking, or your mom, even, or your dad, and yes, that's heartbreaking. But when you lose a child, it's just a little bit different. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Your children are supposed to outlive you. So that's kind of hard. But I get joy from hearing you say something about your grandkids or even Chloe or anything. I feel like people shouldn't be afraid or back away from that. It doesn't really after it doesn't really hurt. God really blesses you in those moments of being involved in other people's lives with their kids, and they calling you auntie or grandma or
Mm.
whatever, adopting you, so it's not painful. And I just say, just be yourself, just really try to be yourself. And try, most of the time when the person's hurting, they will tell you. And I think that to me, it's okay to say that you're not feeling okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I know you've known me long enough that I shut down January 20th, which is the day of Tiffany's accident. You know that Ron and I go away and we shut ourselves down. And, people will say, praying for you, you reached out. That's great. But we take that time to honor the grief and really, because it comes on as such a wave at different moments and different times. And especially on those memorable days, birthdays, holidays, the day of, her passing. They're hard days, even now, even though it's been 17 years.
Oh,
It's really, they're difficult days. The more I think it further along it goes, it feels like it's a little bit harder, only because it's been so long since you've seen them, smelled them, touched them, heard their voices.
yeah.
So
I can't, I mean, obviously I can't relate at all. And I literally, I mean, obviously I get choked up even thinking about it. It's just one of those things I've never been able to sort of like even, I can't even like think about it.
yeah.
But my grandmother, my uncle was murdered. And
Hmm.
so that was something I remember the day my grandmother, my mother fell to the floor screaming, sobbing. And, my mother, there was a ton of grief and she pulled herself together and she got through it and she never forgot her brother. My grandmother never got over it and she never got treatment for the PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, I couldn't quite understand. It's like, it's been 10 years. Why is she still crying every day? But now as an adult, as a child, I see it very differently, obviously.
Hmm.
As a kid, I was like, Mom, why does she still cry every day? I mean, it was hard sometimes to be around her because she could not stop crying.
Hmm.
But that is, as a parent, I think that when people ask us at Amen Clinics, when do you start getting treatment for grief? When would you get treatment for a broken arm
Hmm.
or any other injury?
Yeah.
Immediately.
Immediately.
You need to start the healing process immediately, right?
Yes, and we were fortunate enough. Obviously, our church is amazing, as you know, and we were guided to a counselor who was wonderful. He had lost a child early on, like a baby, I think a couple years old, but it's traumatic. So he could relate to us, and we started the conversation early on. And I remember him saying, that grief in a married couple, the percentage of divorce, Tana, is like 90%.
Mm.
Whether you are a strong believer or not, it's just so hard because you both grieve differently. And then there's lots of family dynamics. Tiffany, she was an only child. There wasn't, and we had been divorced for a long time, but Ron still loved her since she was like 13. That's when he met her, and he loved her for so many years and like his own. But we grieve differently. Everybody grieves differently, and so yeah, it's you never know. Like, you may be feeling the wave of grief that morning, and that person may get up and it's all sunshine. And, that's where the communication, you've got to have good communication and
Mhm.
let that person be and not drag that person down, because grief is like this huge tsunami and it can destroy everything around you if
Yes.
you do not process it properly with a counselor, with somebody. And it's a thing for the rest of your life, Tana. It never goes away. Grief doesn't go away. We're only going to heal when we get to heaven, and our broken hearts will be healed.
Right.
But here on earth, we're going to carry this grief forever. It's forever changes you, forever makes you just a different person.
But I like what you're saying. Different, not broken,
No,
not but different.
yeah.
And one thing we talk about, Daniel and I, obviously the name of our podcast, at which you were a guest on, is the Brain Warrior's Way. And what we talk about is turning pain to purpose. And I don't think I know another person who has done that better than you have. Pain to purpose. So I know your story and how hard it was for you to pull through. And I know you questioned why God would do this.
Mhm.
But you prayed to God. And interestingly, unlike a lot of people, you actually listened,
Mhm.
right, for an answer, and God heard you.
Mhm.
And so tell us what came out of that, your pain to purpose story.
So in the early stages of my grief, I had this chair, and I called it my crying chair. And I called it my wrestling with God chair, because Ron would come home and he'd say, how'd it go today? And I said, well, I had a huge wrestling match with the Lord today. And he'd say, who won? And I'd say, well, he did, I'm serious. I was being serious, because I would, like Job, wrestle and ask these questions like, why me? Or why did this happen? Why couldn't you stop it? I mean, we can live in the whys, but, it was after a while I started thinking, okay, look, I can't even ask these questions anymore. I'm just going to look straight at you, and I'm going to focus on you. Pretty much like, that saying that kids say, I'm going to get in your face,
Yeah.
which kind of, but I kind of did that. I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to get in your face. You're going to teach me everything I need to know about grief. You're going to help me process this. You're going to help me help me get beyond this, because I can't, I felt like I was sinking in quicksand and it was pulling me under. That's what it felt like in the early stages. Like, it was so heavy. And, it was maybe about a year and a half or 2 years later, we had a new women's ministry leader, and she came up to me and she said, Sandra, there have been many people who've said that, you would be the next person to run our mom's Bible study. I went, okay. She was new. She didn't even know who I mean, really was. And I thought to myself, does she really even know my story? And I said, well, let me pray about it. And I had to giggle. I kind of knew it was God's way of saying, Sandra,
100%.
you've been a mom. You kind of raised your brothers and sisters. You know the background of my story, and you guys can read it in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Grieving and Recovery. My story is in that if you want to go read that, or you can even go to my blog and it's on there somewhere. But anyways, I giggled and I said, Lord, you are going to walk me through every day looking at women who are Tiff's age, having babies, something I'm never going to have, but I'm going to walk through this. And now I'm a mama to, like, all these, mentor a lot of young women who have, young babies and kiddos, and they call me Aunt Sandra or Grandma. So it's funny, but it's so true. I've always.
Yeah, so God does have a little bit of a sense of humor, but he knew probably what you needed.
But also, Tana, my story that I raised my brothers and sisters. Almost my mom left when we were young, so I've always had that mom heart. As people said, always trying to take care of, kind of like you, taking care of, being in charge. And so I think that's he knew that, and he knew that these sweet mamas needed guidance and love, and the importance of saying, today's the day, and our society and our culture is so rushed, and we want to put our kids into everything, and really all our kids need is you're the parent, needs the mom, needs the dad, needs that connection, so every day, not all the busyness that we put them in.
Oh, one of the good things that happened through all of this quarantine stuff was the
Right.
connection.
Yes,
Yeah.
I heard that. Family time again,
Yeah.
meal time together. No one's off anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I did not mind that.
yeah.
So you obviously helped me as an interior designer. You're an amazing interior designer. But tell us about your book, Tiffany and the Talking Frog.
So that was kind of a cathartic thing for me to do. Tiffany wanted to be a writer. And
Oh,
so she was going, she had, had just re-enrolled at the University of Northern Kentucky, just wanting to do some journalism, take some classes and things like that. And she always was very gifted at writing. I've got stuff that she's written before that have always touched my life. And I thought, wow, where'd she learn how to do this? So that's kind of her thing. But again, in my quiet moments, in my grieving process, maybe about 4 or 5 years later, the Lord impressed on me that, no, you're going to write a children's story. And it's going to be about something you used to tell Tiffany. And so Tiffany loved frogs. I mean, she would search for them. They're, creepy looking. They're not the
I'm like
cutest
that.
things, right? She always had these little, I want that pet frog, or I want that little stuffed animal, Kermit the Frog, all that. It was just her thing. And so as a reminder, there's a thing that says, frog stands for the acrostic, fully relying on God. And so I used to tell her that as a little girl. And so she'd always, that's what the symbol meant to her. And when she passed away, actually, it was so cute. I was going through like her wallet, and she had this little plastic frog in her wallet, inside of it. I have it now. I carry it in my wallet, inside there, because she had it in hers. But it was something that I used to say to her, that, you can always rely on the Lord. And so anyway, so I came up with a story, and I processed it. It was really cathartic for me to do, Tana, because the book, there's a resemblance of Tiffany in it, and even her little puppy dog Chester is in the story. And so it's a little story about a little frog who doesn't look like the other frogs. He's discolored, and they make fun of him, and so he doesn't have any friends, and she meets up with him, and then she tells him things that moms say to her, and they're off on a journey of purpose, for him. So it's just a silly little story. But for me, I wrote it for moms, because I wrote it for moms to read to their kids, because it's so important in those early stages of childhood to sit down and read with your children.
Oh, yes.
Share amazing stories with them. Let their minds be creative and imagine. So
I love that. And it's funny, because one of the things that Daniel and I talk about for grief is, and not just for grief, but just for healing from the past. If what you and I were, we've talked a lot. I was drawn to you almost immediately, and I wasn't sure why. There's people in your life that are like that, and one thing is you're so filled with grace. You're just this amazing person who is so gentle and kind, and you've got so much grace, and I'm not. so I'm drawn to people who I'm very feisty. I'm a fighter. But I want to have that gentler side. And so when I met you, I was just like, there's just something about her that I really love. And in addition to, I heard your story, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's my biggest fear. And I knew it was God trying to tell me, you need to learn something, because I wouldn't even let Chloe go anywhere. Like when she was little, I was terrified, which it's not my life. It's her life. I can't do that. That's not fair. So that isn't healthy. But also, you are like this great spiritual mentor, like you and I have even now, a
Mhm.
21-day thing we're doing where we do what we are grateful for. We text each other and we hold each other accountable. And that's just so helpful for someone like me who gets frustrated pretty easily when things are going, sideways. And it really helps ground me. So I love that. But one thing we talk about is people writing their stories, not necessarily writing a book, but
Mhm.
journaling their story because it is cathartic. And that's essentially what you did. I just wrote
Yeah.
my book,
Yeah.
right? The Relentless Courage of a Scared
Yes.
Soul. And I didn't really anticipate how healing it would be. So if I could encourage people today to do one thing, that's probably what I would say is journal your story. What would you tell people to do? What gives them something they could do?
Absolutely. Well, for me, a lot of it was sitting back and hearing the Lord and seeing his hand in my life. So, what I mean by that is, even when I was a little girl, just he knew, well, when my mom left, and he knew that I would be this mom to Tiffany that wouldn't be leaving, that would be staying, that would do the opposite of what I was raised with, because he knew that Tiffany only had so much time on earth. And so, I was involved in all her stuff. I was, cheer mom. I was like all these things, but he knew that. He knew because of my childhood. So because of, if you look back and you see God's hand in your life, that's one thing I would what I would recommend is really look for, how God has weaved your life in the past and then to now, because you really can't do that until you're sitting still with the Lord. And then the other thing is, again, finding something that's cathartic for you, whether it's expressing yourself in painting. I hear that a lot. I know a mom who lost her son suddenly and in an accident, and she's become this amazing artist. And she started to draw like angels. And then now, she sells them everywhere. And people who've written books like you have. I think about Nancy Guthrie. She's written an amazing book, Holding On to Hope. She lost 3 children to a disease, and it's just heartbreaking. But, I think of even musicians who write songs and that creative outlet. You need to find something like that. It's so many people destroy their lives and everybody else's around them with grief because of what you said. They just can't move forward. They stay stuck in that for a long time, and then, like you said, there's some people who, like you, because you didn't understand, but she didn't get help to help her move forward.
Right.
So that's the other, counseling would be another one too. And then just, seeking the Lord, just seeking, for guidance from him would be my last thing that I would say, was really just stay focused, even though you don't feel like it. And he knows, it says that others will pray for you, others will,
Yep.
shed your tears, and he knows if you can't even speak a word, it's okay. It's
okay. Yeah.
okay.
Well, what's interesting is, obviously we believe in the power of prayer and relying on God for a whole different reason, but even from a brain perspective and a scientific perspective, it changes your brain. It actually changes the chemistry of your brain to be more healthy.
Yeah,
So
I love when you and Daniel tell me that, in conversations that we've had before.
yeah. So if you can get your friends together and do a prayer group for you, a prayer chain, there's just more power. Even there you go. It's just that much healthier. And I just, Sandra, I'm so grateful to you. You're such an amazing person. You help so many people. I've spoken for your group before on nutrition, and you have a pretty big ministry. So it's very amazing to see what God has done in your life, and it's lovely. So you can find Sandra at theartofdomesticity.com, and you can find Tiffany and the Talking Frog on Amazon, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Or they can reach out to me through, they can email me at semaddox@cox.net, and
I love that. Okay.
I'll be happy to send a book to you.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. And if there is anyone out there struggling right now, these times are unprecedented. If you are struggling, don't wait to get help. And if you know someone that can help you professionally, that's great. If you don't, and you just need a suggestion, please don't hesitate to call our clinics at 844-818-0616. Even if it's not one of our clinics, we can help you find a referral to somewhere else. And some people are afraid to come get help because they think that they're going to immediately be put on medication that's going to numb them, and they don't want to be numbed. But guess what? We don't just do that. It's prayer. It's meditation. It's supplements can be so helpful. Things like saffron or GABA can help people just calm down without drugging them into, just oblivion. We don't want to do that and to drug grief. And you can also go to my website, tanaamon.com, and find all sorts of tools there, like our one-page miracle, which just helps you sort of journal what is going on in your life. So please share this video, tag 3 friends, especially if you know someone who has suffered from grief. Please tag them, and I will enter you into a drawing to win my 6-month Brain Warriors Way online course that I did with my husband. And it's 6 months of us guiding you, holding your hand to help you transform your life and find pain to purpose, right? Help you transform your pain to purpose. And it's a $395 value. And Sandra, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know that this is going to touch a lot of people. You're just an amazing human, and I'm just so grateful to you.
Thank you, Tana. Always so good to see you and hear from you. It's great.
Absolutely.